Hello. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Or, since this is remote, I guess you could be anywhere. So good afternoon and good evening, just in case. Um, my name's Nash, and I am a developer evangelist at a company called Twilio. It's a delight to kind of be presenting here at NDC with you all. Twilio, by the way, let me just give a quick introduction to that. Twilio is a communications platform. That is, it is an API or a whole bunch of APIs that you can use in your applications to connect or communicate with your users via things like voice, video, email, messaging, things like fax, and doing other things like two-factor authentication or phone number verification, all that sort of stuff. If there's a communications thing you want to do online, we probably have an API for it. And I am sort of talking about communications a bit today, in that we are going to be taking a look at JavaScript and emails and seeing what the state of the art in email is right now. Oh yeah, because I'm sure emails are a constant thing in all of our lives. I'm fairly sure that you are looking at a non-empty inbox right now, off to your side somewhere, probably. There's things people want doing from you. There's companies want your attention, and a lot of it goes through our inbox. And we're talking about things from a developer point of view today. So actually, we're not worried too much about filling people's inboxes up with stuff. I'm worried about how we do so and how we can make that better. So every web application that I've ever worked on that's gone into production sends emails. It can be from the basic, user kind of user registration emails, forgotten passwords, everything from that up to kind of receipts for purchases or reminders, notifications, something to re-engage and get you back into the application. Every web application sends some emails. And that means as developers, we have to build those emails, which, normally leads us to HTML emails. I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry about HTML emails. They've been around for more than 20 years, and they make me feel like this. Pop in the chat if you've have you built an HTML email recently? I am watching, by the way, both the Slack and the chat here on WebEx. So if you do have any comments along the way, I will be keeping an eye on that. But if this is your feeling when you think about HTML emails, give me a thumbs up or an equally sad and disappointed face in the chat. This is how I feel, basically because HTML email, as far as I can tell, hasn't really moved on since it was invented. It's basically HTML is a combination of modern web design where we have to make things look really pretty inside an email, but the tools and the development that with which we built GeoCities and MySpace pages. That's kind of about the impression I have of HTML emails at the moment. It looks like this. It is tables, it is BG colors, it is widths and cell spacing and v-aligns, all the attributes you've never used for an awfully long time. It's tables for layout. It's almost impossible to have an actual background image on things. You have to use the background or the BG background image attribute in order to get that. Most CSS doesn't work. The CSS, if it does work, must be inlined into the thing. It's basically a horrible, horrible, horrible development experience. Yet I am continually impressed when I think about it. Every time I think about how bad an HTML email is, I am super impressed by the actual HTML emails I receive. They look nice. They work. They render correctly inside my inbox. And in fact, rendering engines is one of those things as well. We probably, as web developers, can spend time complaining about having to fix things for Internet Explorer, although that should be going away soon, or Edge, or Safari, or Firefox, or Chrome, and maybe that's it. So much stuff is Chromium based now, then Firefox, and then Safari, and those are our three rendering engines we have to deal with. Whereas on the in the email inbox, not only do you have different rendering engines of different browsers, you also have the fact that even web-based email clients will allow or disallow different attributes, different types of CSS. And then there's desktop clients, and you're not even sure what's going on with those. And particularly my favorite, or my least favorite, let's say least favorite, I'm not going to be sarcastic about this, it's my least favorite, is Outlook 2019, because it's still, to this date, using the HTML rendering engine of Word. And if you're not into HTML emails, then finding out that Microsoft Word has an HTML rendering engine is one thing, but finding out that Outlook 2019, so just last year's Outlook, sure, like it's been doing this for years, but just last year's Outlook is still kind of leaning on Word for its HTML rendering, even though it has Edge or Chromium just there on the operating system waiting to be used to render things. So yeah, that's kind of the state of HTML emails right now, and this is kind of how I feel like this is what you get every time. Kind of sarcastic help from Clippy, like good luck with that, guys. Can it be better though? Well, like I said, I'm already impressed by what people do manage to achieve with emails and their formatting, but can we have better experiences than the ones that we currently produce? Because I've been noticing recently that there are kind of new experiences appearing in email, and we're now going to go live to my inbox. That hopefully is okay. All right, we're inside a label, so I'm not showing you everything, but I've got a couple of examples here of emails that I think are just really good experiences that you might have seen, might not have. But first one is the kind of Google Calendar invitation. Now I'm in Gmail and it's a Google Calendar invitation, which means it can do this little box at the top, which has actually nothing to do with the email, which is the thing sent below. But because it's Google and Google, it can kind of pick out that this is an invitation email, and then I should probably actually accept this. This is right now. Let's say yes, and we can respond inside the email to a invitation. I think that's brilliant, but that's kind of built. That's a Gmail hack as far as I can tell. But if we take a look at this one, this is Google Docs, and if you've ever left a comment on a Google Doc and then somebody's responded to that comment whilst you weren't looking at the page, you probably get the kind of list of latest comments on it. But if you're inside Gmail or indeed some other inboxes, you actually get to be able to reply to those comments within it. In fact, I think if I bring this out of full screen, come here. If I come out of full screen here, somewhere in the background, yes, I have that document available. And so I can reply to this comment thread right here. This is about a very important document, as you can see. This is really important. I'm just having a conversation with myself at this point with this example. But if I reply there, that's going to send the reply through there, and it's appearing straight in the documentation straight away. In the document, sorry, straight away, which I think is just a magical experience. You wouldn't, of course, have the document up on the one side whilst you reply to it from your email, but this is pretty cool. And I like also that if you go back, we had that original email, which you can see here, which are the original comments there, but we also load those latest comments as well before also loading this form to send a message back. Finally, I can just resolve that as well, and that comment is done with, and it disappears. So that's a pretty good email experience, if you ask me. And there's not many times that people talk about good email experiences in this world, as far as I'm aware. So I'm pretty excited about being able to do that, and that's why I want to ask the question. JavaScript and emails. Are we absolutely sure about this? So how is this done? That's the important part of this to start with. I want to take you on a little detour through the world of AMP, which will tell us a bit more about what we need here. So AMP is Google's project to create accelerated mobile pages. It's actually to get this sort of experience on the web it starts with like a search. It normally has a news thing and like this carousel at the top there. And then if you click on it, the articles tend to load instantly. But they load into this kind of viewer, which is weird. And we'll see it again in a second. So we've got the carousel. In the background, we load into a viewer, which you can tab between things, but also you're still technically on Google. So this is accelerated mobile pages. It is it's a web framework, which is something, and we need plenty of those. So it's a web framework. It is open source, which is cool. It's based on web components. So the entire when you build with AMP, you build with web components entirely. No kind of other frameworks. So it's very declarative in a way. Like it's like writing HTML, which is great. And it's designed for performance. So many of the parts of AMP are made to either have page load quickly, or once it's loaded, not kind of move about, not cause that layout, relayout, and jank in a page that slow pages do cause. There's one extra bit to AMP that makes a whole lot of this fast loading happen, and that's the fact that it is on google.com or .com.au in this particular case, and so it is cached by Google, and then on that search page, it is kind of preloaded as well. So in the background, whilst you're looking at it like this, it is preloading those things so they can instantly appear on your screen. So for that reason, I'm not the biggest fan of AMP web pages, and I appreciate their the kind of web framework's attempt to make you build performant pages, and much of that is down to, again, that like not making things relay out. So you have to, for example, within AMP, give images an intrinsic size so that the browser and the rendering engine knows how much space to give that image. I'm less of a fan of the I'm less of a fan of the fact that you must host these pages inside this AMP cache that is also owned by Google, and load up your articles or load up your pages on a Google domain. It sort of breaks the web in that respect for me personally, and I don't like it. So I've not spent time building AMP pages. So this was when I learned that AMP email is a thing, I had to start from scratch. These are some examples of those custom elements you can use in AMP. So there's things like the AMP image, and that takes over from your regular image tag. And the important part there is that the AMP image enforces that height and width that you require. And there are other kind of more interactive things like AMP accordion, which allows you to do multiple kind of headers and opening up underneath them. AMP forms, which allow you to request data, AMP date picker, which is another web custom element that gives you a date picker. It's nice. There is even sort of blessed third party kind of custom elements here. So YouTube, Instagram, and Reddit there again will all load content from those external sites, but in a performant way. So AMP kind of does a good job of that. The AMP email is the thing that kind of got me excited about AMP in general, because AMP email has nothing to do with this Google cache of things, so we don't have to worry about that anymore, which is nice. So AMP email is a subset of the AMP elements and a bit of a subset of their functionality as well. You can do less inside an email that you can use to create dynamic interactive emails, which is pretty exciting. And so AMP email is the thing that's behind that Google Docs comment feature that we just saw. And I'm just excited to be able to build with this kind of thing. So it's such a subset of elements that I actually wanted to run through each of them just to give a quick overview of what we can do with them. So you get AMP image and AMP anim. So AMP anim is actually really just AMP image, but for GIFs, also to make them as performant as possible. There's AMP fit text, which will allow text to kind of grow and shrink within an element, so you can make nice headings with that kind of thing. An AMP time ago, which does kind of timestamps and relative time, which is really useful. Some of these elements are actually kind of useful, possibly outside of AMP web pages, but they're pretty cool that they exist inside. So those are sort of display elements that we have. Then there's layout elements, which is kind of cool. There's those things to me like accordion, like I said, which has opening kind of disclosures and things like that. There's the carousel, which allows you to swipe through or page through images or elements. There's lightboxes, image lightbox and lightbox, which will pop open and take over the screen, which is kind of cool. AMP selector you can use to kind of build tab based layouts. AMP sidebar is a retractable sidebar for your emails. And AMP layout allows you to do other sort of stuff like that. I'm not quite sure about AMP layout. It's weird because AMP also supports better CSS, and I'll get to that in a minute. Then there's the interactive elements. These are the ones that actually kind of make requests from inside an email off to a server somewhere. So AMP autocomplete can, make requests and fill in state that to autocomplete on an email. Not an email, an input field. AMP form allows you to submit a whole bunch of fields. And AMP list allows you to make a GET request to go and load kind of data into a state that another element can use. And then there's these support elements at the end. AMP bind and AMP bind macro allow you to bind data to a particular element. So once that data updates, the element itself will then update again. And AMP mustache is used in templates, and we'll see a bit of that in a bit. Like I said, CSS support is surprisingly good now in an AMP email. First up, you can put your CSS inside a style element in the head of the document, which it still blows my mind that this is not possible in most HTML email, and most CSS must be in line. But inside an AMP email, you can put it inside the head, which is pretty sweet. And then you can do modern CSS, and I say including background images. Background image is not a modern CSS thing, but you can do it in CSS in an AMP email. But also layout things like flexbox and grid, as well as pseudo classes, something you can't do with an inline style, and then some media queries, mostly screen size media queries. There are some that you can't use, but you just have more access to this, and it's incredible. In fact, in some respect, I would vote for using AMP email simply for the CSS support and the fact that we can have a modern development experience inside of an email. So this all sounds pretty good. I think this AMP email has this potential to be really good. There must be some things that are wrong with it, right? Well, firstly, if you're not a user of Gmail or indeed Outlook.com, Mail.ru, or Yahoo Mail, then you probably won't have seen some of those experiences that I just showed, because AMP email only works inside of those. And these are the web clients for these. So Outlook.com, not Outlook on the desktop, particularly. Gmail actually does support AMP emails inside of their iOS and Android applications now. So Gmail, if you're using the actual Gmail viewer to view emails, will work with AMP emails. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. No, I came up with that. I have not necessarily a bad thing in a minute. It is a progressive enhancement. So normally in an HTML email, you might, in an email application, you might be sending text plain and text HTML parts as different MIME types. If you want to add an AMP email, you just add another type on. So this is a progressive enhancement. So that means that those email clients that cannot read a text XAMP HTML part will fall back to a text HTML or text plain in order to read the email. So that, I think, is a good thing. It doesn't break email. It just adds to it. This is what I thought I was going to get, the email client market share. So funnily enough, like Gmail, so this is great. This is statistics from Litmus Labs and their email analytics. And in September this year, 36% of people opened emails in Apple iPhone, but 26% opened in Gmail. And Yahoo Mail's on there at number 5 and Outlook.com at number 9. And of course, Mail.ru is pretty good if you're sending to people in Russia. That doesn't show in these global statistics, but it is super popular there. So Gmail's right near the top there. So you're not necessarily dealing with the absolute, with tiny numbers of people here. if you decide to try and create AMP emails. If you have an email provider that also collects stats, then you might be able to actually check in on your actual user base and what they use. So that's an important thing to take into account as well if you're considering this. Then there's email DNS fun. Everything in development at the moment seems to come down to DNS being the issue, at least I find at the moment. And email is no different to that. And so when you are sending emails, there's three things that you absolutely need to send for AMP HTML emails. So there's SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. So your email sender must pass all three of these in order to send an AMP email. So SPF is a DNS record that specifies the IP addresses that can send mail on behalf of a domain. So this allows a mailbox to say, hey, I got this email, and it came from this IP address. I'm going to check this DNS entry and see if it was allowed to send it to me. If it wasn't, it's going to be marked as spam, or it's going to be more suspicious. DKIM is a way to sign the content of an email that can be confirmed by the mailbox. So again, it's another DNS record, in this case, that has a public key in it that can be used to confirm a signature on the content of the email. So this shows that the email hasn't been altered since leaving the mailbox and since leaving the mail sender and arriving in the inbox. And then DMARC kind of combines or builds on top of those two to actually provide a way for the domain owners to understand who's sending email on their behalf. So if an email fails SPF or DKIM, your DMARC DNS record will say what to do with that. So you can say do nothing, whatever. You can make your own decision, but you can also say quarantine, so put it into spam, or just block it. So if you are convinced that somebody else is sending this email on your behalf, you can tell a mailbox that's looking up a DMARC record just not to ever put this in an inbox. It's not from you. You can also get reports, so you can set up email addresses within that DMARC record to tell a mailbox what to do, to tell mailbox to send reports about these emails back to you, so you can understand what's going on. So you actually want these, if you're sending lots of email, you want these three things anyway. So that is probably, so hopefully it's already sorted for you if you're sending on behalf of domain. But I had to, in my testing, add these to my own domain, and it sort of works and sort of doesn't. In fact, let me tell you, like I was testing this, and I had this working inside of my Twilio mail. Now, my Twilio mail is on G Suite; it's inside Gmail basically. And at one point, it was working, and then I made some tweak to the DNS, and my AMP email stopped working. It started failing DKIM for some reason, and I still haven't worked it out. However, still sending that email to my Gmail, my regular Gmail address, the DKIM was passing. So there's something going on there between my Twilio mailbox and my emails. But I was a little thankful when I actually I checked out the Google Docs comments version as well, and that also failed DKIM. So if Google's getting it wrong inside my Twilio mailbox, then I'm okay to get that wrong as well, or just something else is being changed, something is being done by the mailbox. So it's a pain, but I managed to get this set up correctly that it works with my regular Gmail, so I'm okay with that. Now, testing and sending AMP email is, of course, important, and there's three good things for you. There's an AMP playground, which is built into the AMP documentation, and that allows you to. Let's have a quick look at these. Oops. There's the AMP playground. AMP for email. It gives you a thing you can write the email in and a viewer to test it in. It will also validate the emails as well. Let's go back. Yep, not there. Aha. Oh dear. No. I'm trying to work out. I seem to have lost my actual slides there. Let's go out of full screen and regain things. Yeah, I did. Did I lose my slides? No, I just clicked through. So Let's go back. Yes, I want to leave. I want to go back to my slides, please. Thank you. There we go. There's the Gmail AMP email playground. And this is a similar playground. We're similarly doing validation for you. But at the bottom, there's a super important send button, which allows you to send it off to your own email address. Very useful if you're just playing around with this, but want to see this inside your inbox. And then finally, you also want the AMP validator. This doesn't do sending for you. It's a bit like the Gmail playground, but validation, again, is super important. Otherwise, your emails just will not work. Cool. If you have a Gmail account and you want to test this with your own account, you want to go into your settings and hit developer settings under dynamic email and then preview dynamic emails. So amp@gmail.dev is that AMP Gmail sandbox, and you can then add your own. So I'll be sending emails to myself with phil@nash.rocks, which is my domain I'm using for emails. I liked it. So to send AMP emails, you can either send from your own email server if it supports text/XAMPP HTML, or you can send from an email service that supports AMP email. And I'd be in trouble since I work at Twilio if I didn't tell you that Twilio SendGrid is one of those services that supports sending AMP email, and is actually in my demo what I'll be using to send the emails. When it comes to production, though, you actually must get whitelisted by each mailbox provider. Currently, there's only 4 of them, but it used to actually be the case that you had to fill in a form for each of them, which is bad. But a recent addition was actually a single form which you could fill in and get your AMP email whitelisted. Once you've got that, you can start sending them and they'll work, which is nice. So that's a lot of talk about AMP emails. I actually just want to show you them in action now instead. So I've got a little application I've been building which does polls. It's a nice, easy thing. And inside this application, you can't answer the poll inside the application at all, but you can send it over email. And the poll is asking a question that genuinely tears apart my team at work at Twilio a lot. And it is, which do you prefer, pie or cake? And there are great battles on either side. Me, myself, I like to sit on the fence with this because both pie and cake are great. But no, there are arguments about this all the time. So I've started building this polling application, and it sends emails. So it's running in the background, and if I send an email to my Gmail address right now, it should arrive in this inbox right here. Cool. And this is what the email looks like right now. It looks like a pretty regular HTML email at this point because not a lot's been done to it. But you can see just here, this little, hold on, I can just, here is this little lightning bolt sign, which says that it is an AMP email, which is good. It just doesn't have any AMP features in it right now. We can show the original HTML, which is going to look the same. And if we just show the absolute original email message, which is useful, this is the email format it is. We can see here that SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are all passing on this email, which is important for that DNS stuff. I've spent quite a lot of time looking at this view whilst debugging these emails in the past. Anyway, let's make this a bit better. Let's go to VS Code. And this is the email itself that we're sending. So I have this as part of this. I'm building this in a Node.js application, but this email is here. This email is actually going to be rendered. It's templated in Nunjux, which is a templating language built in Node, and you'll see some of that as part of this. Now, so there's some little bits about AMP emails here, such as the HTML at the top there needs that AMP for email attribute. If you don't like the emoji, you can just do AMP for email with letters as well, but I like to keep the emoji in there. It's fun. You've got to include JavaScript. You've got to include the AMP project base kind of JavaScript for this, and you must also include this style in the head, under the AMP for email boilerplate. So this actually just keeps the body of the email hidden until it's loaded. So that's one of the things that AMP does to stop sites or documents kind of thrashing layout about by waiting till it's ready to show and then showing it the first time. This email is then based off of an actual HTML email I'm also using, so it has a couple of tables just nested just for fun. And this is where my Nunjuck's kind of template rendering in. So it's got that question and answer A or answer B. It's always a two-part question in this particular app. So it's not super exciting right now. I want to make it a little bit more exciting by first adding a carousel. So I have some images for these options. And this is going to make me hungry because it is coming up to lunchtime and I've got cake and pie images. If you want to use one of the elements, then you have to include the script tag. So that script, there we go, yeah. I love that it's async as well, but we also define the custom element that it's going to create. In this case, we are going to add the AMP carousel and then give it the source as well. What's nice about these sources is that because they're well known by the inbox provider, they can have these preloaded as well, so it doesn't take a long time to load this JavaScript. So that's added the AMP carousel source. Now we can actually add a carousel itself. So I'm going to go to my little comment there and just pop in an AMP carousel. This is I love the carousel because it just shows that one line, a little bit of interactivity in an email that will actually make things just makes things nicer. Keeps things above the fold as well. So what we're going to do with the carousel is we're going to give it a width and a height, and that's based on the images that are going inside of it. Again, this is one of the AMP things where you have to set those widths and heights in order to make the layout correct, make the layout work fine. We're going to also tell it that it's got a layout that's responsive. So that actually means that those width and height will then be used as aspect ratio as well as a kind of maximum size for viewing this on a small screen. And I can say the type is slides. Don't need those colons in there. Type is slides, and that's the end of the AMP carousel. And then inside there, I'm going to add some AMP images. So the AMP image again has width and height to be added. And then we'll add it's a source. It's a source. Well, sometimes things just go out your mind. We'll add a source. There we go. And this source is going to be based on the poll itself. So I need to interpolate that in as the email is generated in the first place. So this is answer A's image. And that's that AMP image. And then I can take that and it's going to be the same for answer B. Sweet. So that's added an AMP carousel. I'm going to send that to myself. And it's going to replace this. So let's send that. And if I go back to the inbox, refresh, I should have a new email. There it is. And that new email has got my carousel in it. And it's got my picture of pie and also picture of cake. So pretty good so far. This is, in order to add this, all we've done is add a script tag to the head and then 3 extra elements, an AMP carousel and 2 AMP images. These carousels can also actually trigger state changes, so we can change the content of the email below based on the image that's currently showing in the carousel. But I didn't think that was necessary as part of this today. But that's quite cool. That's a good start already. But the real important part of this email, I think, is the interactive part, the bit where we actually vote on cake or pie. So for that, I need a form. So if I pop back to the top of the page, I can copy this script tag, and instead of AMP carousel, I'm going to add the AMP form element. And again, I don't know these URLs off by heart, sadly, so I have them off to the side, ready to copy. I've got the AMP form added right there. I'm also going to add another one because the form actually uses templates as well. And so we're going to add AMP mustache. which allows us to do templating within the email based on JSON responses from a server. So that's cool. Let's check it out. We've got the question here, and then I'm going to put the form underneath. So that's going to go inside a div with a class of votes as well. That'll be used for styling later. And so one of the weird things I found about this was how we actually construct these things. So a form is mostly similar to what you do on a web page. We've got a post method. We can give it an ID in this case. This is going to be answer A's form. Answer A form. And what we set an action. We don't set an action attribute. We actually set an action XHR attribute. And that action XHR attribute is going to go back to my website, which I'm hosting on ngrok right now, or using ngrok to tunnel through right now. So that's ngrok.io/polls / and I need to just interpolate the poll ID into that. And then we're making a post actually to the /votes endpoint. And once I've done that, let's close that form. Close the form tag, and that's the form there. We'll add one more bit to this form later, but for right now, that's what it needs. And then inside of it, I'm going to add, and I'm not going to type all of this out because that will take forever, because I've got some inputs. They're just hidden inputs that send in the answer and the email address of the person I sent it to. So that's there, as well as a submit button, which is our important part. So we just got two hidden inputs, which you can use inside these emails, which is cool. And then an input type submit, and that also has the value, which is going to show the number on it. It's funny that in these AMP forms, you can't use a button. You can't use input type button, but you can use input type submit. So those rules are still kind of around and a little odd at times, but you just have to deal with them. I also have this form I'm going to copy down to do answer B as well. So whichever answer B is for this particular poll, I'm going to add a second form for it. Oh, no, I've forgotten what I really need to do, which is at the bottom of the form. This is part of the declarative state of how AMP forms work. So we're not actually going to write any real JavaScript here. What we do is when the form submits successfully, submit success, it will render this div, which is very cool. Or it will render a template, which is actually what I'm going to have it do for this example, because I'm going to use that div in the bottom form as well. There's also a submit error div, and in this particular case, it will then render a template for me, the type being AMP mustache, although I'm not actually rendering anything into this particular template. Sorry if you can hear my dog going off in the background. That's the old working from home thing. So she's found somebody to bark at. Let's just put something went wrong there. And so those two, because I'm using the same template for the second form, I'm going to add them to the bottom of this form as well. And then I actually need to implement that final template. So I'm going to pop it at the bottom of the page here. So this template is a type of AMP mustache, and it has the ID of poll chart. Yeah. And inside this, so inside a template like this, like I said, you can use mustache templates to render the result of the request. So the request is coming back with a bunch of stats about the poll at this point, and so it's going to have the latest results. And we can just, in this case, render mustache templates. And this is going to have answer A's answer. That's the text of the actual answer and the number of answer A dot votes. And we'll do the same for answer B. I said the same for answer B, not just A again. B and B. So inside of that, I'm going to add a couple more bits to the bottom of this, which is hopefully eventually going to render a nice little bar chart for me. But we'll get to that in a bit. We have the height of each of the bars here to show as well. So that's our template. I think at this point, I can actually send this email to myself again. Let's go back over here to the poll, send it to myself and see what happens. Head on out of the inbox and refresh it. And there it is. There's a new one. So we should see, we've got our carousel, of course. Now we have pi or pi. That's concerning. That's not very fair in the old poll there. No, what I did was copy the form and not replace A with B. There we go. Even so, we can look at how this works right now, and we'll just vote for pi, I guess. So when we make a vote for pi, it does the work. It sent me the latest results back, so pi is at 15, cake's at 22. But there's some awkward bits here, right? We're missing what's supposed to be a bar chart. We also see that the buttons are still on the page, which is not particularly useful for us. So let's fix that, as well as the fact that we can vote for answer B as well, because I like cake. So firstly, I'm going to add some style. And like I said earlier, if all AMP email was making adding styles better, I would almost be happy with it. So you've got this style in the head. You have to give it an AMP custom attribute. And once you've done that, I'm going to just copy and paste some styles in rather than you watch me write out a bunch of CSS. But I can tell you this style also includes Flexbox inside of it as well, which just makes me delighted. So there's that style. I've got a bunch of stuff there. We changed the font of the body, but also like the votes are going to be display flex. So this is going to place the two buttons next to each other. Then I color them blue, and then the chart also is display flex, justify content space around. The divs inside the chart are aligned cell flex end, so they float to the bottom. And that's just style inside the head, inside an email. Just delighted about it. And then the second thing is we want to do something when this form has completed. We've already seen that we'll render this success template when there is a success, but we can actually do some more stuff on that as well. So a bunch of AMP elements will have the on attribute, which allows you to add event or listen to events on them. And they then have a number of events that are available to them. On civic success is one of them for the form. And when you do that, you can then trigger some other actions. And so in this case, on the submission success, I want to hide those buttons and then as well as then rendering the results. Now the results are going to render inside of this form for now, which is fine. So I don't want to hide the whole form, but I do want to hide the answer A inputs, which you can see is the div just below here. You can address elements on the page via their IDs and then call actions on them. Hide is an action that's pretty much available to every element on the page, and there are other actions and there are some custom actions for AMP elements as well. You can actually have more than one thing happen on this event, so we also want to hide the answer B form at the same time. And if you wanted to do more than one event listener, you just separate that with a semicolon, and then submit error would have a different thing, for example. But I'm only going to do this. I'm also going to add that form, that on attribute to the other form, but just switch around the things that are hidden. So in this case, we'll hide answer B inputs and hide the full answer A form. And that's it for our HTML email. So that's for our AMP email even. Let me send that to myself one more time. Head back to the inbox and see if it arrives. There it is. My opinion's been requested. Do we like cake, pie, or cake? So these are the buttons. They're set up in that Flexbox format. Like I said, they're next to each other with justify content space around. And I'm going to go and vote for cake. I'm just going to pop back to the poll here to see that the latest votes were 15 for pie and 22 for cake. So when we vote for this, we should see 23 come back for cake. And there it is. I've hidden the buttons, hidden the form. pi is now 15, cake is 23. We can render a Flexbox rendered bar chart in CSS inside the email, and everything has worked out quite nicely. Pretty delighted by that. And so this is this interactive experience that we can have inside of this email. Now let's finish off with the slides. Cool. There are some further concerns that I haven't quite covered just yet. One of which is security. So the URLs that I was using inside of that email for this example are basically open to anybody to hit. So that's not necessarily cool. What the AMP project suggests is actually if you have like a URL that is only available to a particular user, that you generate an opaque token for that user and attach that to them. This is the sort of thing you probably do inside a web application for like a password reset. You generate that token that says this is this user coming to do this password reset. So in the case of my vote here, what I would probably do is generate a token per poll that's sent out that allows you to vote once on that poll and not a second or third time, which is important. I was just voting as many times as I like. But the security there, you should create tokens for your users if your endpoints require kind of user authentication. Secondly, there's cores. Of course, there's cross-origin issues here. We're inside a mail client at this point, so and inside JavaScript. So cores is important. AMP email and AMP itself actually has its own kind of cores headers that it expects. And the documentation on this is very good, but I just wanted to mention it because it's important to add. And if you are like I was making this application inside of a Node application, the AMP project, the AMP team has created a Node module that handles it for you, which is rather nice. It's not too hard though. Like I said, the documentation is very good on the cores headers here. So, JavaScript for emails. Are we absolutely sure about this? Is it a good idea or not? That's my kind of question for this talk. And well, first up, I guess in answering this, we don't exactly have JavaScript. Like these are custom elements which are implemented in JavaScript, but we have no control over those. And the most kind of JavaScript we ran as part of the thing ourselves was the action. I'm not going to be able to show you. Was the action based on the form submit, and also a little bit of templating. But it's not exactly JavaScript. We don't have a lot of control. We just have what the elements give us, which maybe that's a good thing. There is creativity in constraints. I did want to make a kind of list of the pros and cons of AMP email that help me make the decision. Are we sure? Is it a good idea? And so those pros are, it's a progressive enhancement. Like if you add an AMP email, if you add the AMP email MIME type to your emails, you have to include a text HTML version. And so if a mail inbox receives the AMP email and can't render it, doesn't know what to do with it, it will fall back to the HTML email. So you don't lose out. You're not going to just send blank emails to your users. The user experience is much better for a whole bunch of use cases. And this is my biggest pro really for the whole thing. And I'll get to some examples and things we could possibly do with this in a minute. But I have too many tabs open in my browser at the best of times. I don't need to add to them. And I don't need to, especially when kind of going through my own emails. This is my own experience. I'm going through my own emails, just adding and opening things and getting taken out of whatever flow I'm dealing with is a pain. So the user experience of being able to update something inside the email, inside the inbox is wonderful. And like I said, I got interested in this because I saw this implemented in the Google Docs commenting system. And I just wanted to know, like, how can we bring this to all emails so we don't have to, when we're in the inbox, we don't have to leave it, and we can get things done. And then it is easier to develop an AMP email. It is a better developer experience than a regular HTML email. They're so bad. an AMP email is actually a nicer experience. We have CSS in the head, not inline. We have CSS layout abilities, and just, so much nicer. On the con side, though, and there are a few, and the first one is, of course, it's progressive enhancement, which means that if we were already creating a plain text email and an HTML email, and we still have to create the HTML email, it is adding work in order to create the AMP email as well. So there is more work to this. Secondly, of course, there is the lack of support as well. So you might find that your users are not using Gmail inside the Gmail client itself. They might be using the Apple iPhone or Apple Mail, which many users are, according to the stats. So that lack of support might be a problem for you. Again, I would recommend you check with your email provider, check if you can get statistics on your own users and how they open emails to see if this is worthwhile going for. Then there's a learning curve. If you're not already an AMP developer, there's stuff to learn here. And I've had to go through it in order to work out whether I like this or not. And working with a framework that basically gives you declarative components and a few kind of events and actions that you can tag onto them is not the same as building a new React application, for example, where you have complete control. There is, of course, the server-side stuff as well. If you are providing people ways to trigger actions from an email, you need the endpoints on your server to respond to those actions and secure them with those tokens that I suggested, and return the right cause headers and things like that. So there's server-side work to be done here too. And then finally, there's the kind of requirement to be whitelisted and get approved by these inboxes as well. It's just another step in the way of sending these emails. So I put that down as a con. But ultimately, it's down to what are your goals? What are your goals with sending emails to your users in the first place? If all you ever do is a registration confirmation and a password reset, then this is probably not the most important thing to you. However, if you if you're sending abandoned cart messages because if a user abandons a cart and you're like, you can still buy, or you can add this to your cart, and you can increase your conversion that way. If you are sending out surveys or polls and things like that, and you can get better user engagement without them having to leave their email inbox, then that, listing out those goals and understanding what you want out of your HTML email is important. And so that reminds me of there are some AMP emails that I kind of want to see. These are the ones that I think it could be particularly useful for. And if this triggers something in your application, in your mind, this is something maybe you could go and explore inside your own business. Delivery status, I think, is kind of an interesting one. With AMP emails, you don't expect people to necessarily go back and read an old email to see it updated. That's not what I'm looking for here. But people also don't read emails immediately. So if you're sending a delivery status email that says, it's in stock, and then there's another one for it's shipped and another one it's on the way. The first one the person opens is the first email, even though it's beyond that. We can be loading that latest status, and that's what I'm saying. And actually, I did just see something. So AMP had a conference this week, and one of the things they announced was there's a way of squashing AMP emails together, so that if you send 3 delivery status emails or 4 or whatever, it'll only still appear as one. It'll kind of have that new information in it, though, which is really cool. Product reviews. This is what I want to see, because every time, if I bought something and the company emails me back to say, hey, cool, you've got it, you've had it for a while, do you want to review this? I've never chosen to click through, log into my account and write a review. However, if I could choose a star rating there and then inside the email and possibly add a bit of a review, it might well get done more. And I can see that being a goal of any team, getting more of those reviews done. Similarly for RSVPs, in the normal non-pandemic world, I used to go to plenty of meetups, and receiving the kind of RSVP email from meetup.com is great. But again, it's an easy action to perform when you click yes, I'm going, or no, I'm not. But it opens a new tab. It takes you out of the inbox. You're off to somewhere else. Maybe you get distracted. That's a pain. If the meetup.com RSVP was just a yes or a no inside the email and it loaded up, I'd be delighted with that. And that kind of mirrors that experience with like a Google Calendar invite inside Gmail as well. Going yes or no or whatever without having to leave it. Delightful. Obviously, like my example today was polls, but that you could do much more integrated surveys and things like that. If your company sends out the NPS score, if on a scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend this product to a friend or family member? That can be done inside the email. Which I'm pretty delighted about. And then also listings and sales. So in this particular case, if you have items on sale, for example, you've sent an email about it, but then they've run out of stock, you could be using AMP emails to actually just bring in the actual correct stock levels or the things that are on sale that are still available, that kind of thing, or listings like job listings or adverts. If those are getting sent out, you want the things that are recent and available. And then finally, and I don't know if anyone's ever going to do this, but the unsubscribe form could sit entirely within an AMP email. And I like the idea of giving people a nice experience for unsubscribing from your emails as well as receiving them. So I'd like to see that as well. Again, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but maybe. It's certainly something we can achieve with this. So ultimately, after spending some time with AMP emails, building them and seeing what I could achieve with them, I like AMP emails. I want to see more of them in the world. We can have these better experiences in what are basically mini applications inside our email inbox without opening another browser tab and without taking us out of the flow that we're in. And we can provide that as developers. We can provide that to our users and build up their engagement with our applications without them necessarily having to hit the app itself. It's not the same as AMP websites, and that's a positive to me. AMP websites still have these kind of philosophical problems in my mind, given their reliance on the Google cache. But so the fact that the whole project is open source and then open to all mailboxes is a good thing. So we can actually go back, contribute to AMP email if you ever want to. You can contribute, you can add to the AMP website. The whole thing is open source. And even, I'm not sure there's going to be any people working at mailbox providers here that haven't heard about this, but the AMP project actually provides the AMP renderer to mailboxes as an open source thing as well. So it's there and can be implemented by mailboxes. And finally, I just imagine if AMP email was the new HTML email, if we managed to convince, or if the popularity of sending AMP email and the popularity of receiving AMP email increased enough, that other mailboxes picked this up, that maybe we'd get to a point where we can use CSS as we'd expect to. That's basically my thing. Like, if we could just dump tables from HTML email, I'd just be delighted with that. So if AMP email was the new HTML email, we wouldn't have to worry about the old HTML email anymore. So my call to you is have a go with this. Bring on those experimental email experiences. See what you can do and see what you can provide for your users. I want to see them in my inbox, and I want to click on those buttons and make things happen there. And I also want to know what you think about this. So I'll be around for the rest of the day. I'll be in the Slack for NDC. Hit me up in there. Send me messages there. Or if you're not seeing this at NDC, I'm also online and ready to hear from you. So hit me up. Drop me a tweet at Phil Nash or email me at philnash@twilio.com. I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts about AMP email. And if you want to use them, and if you have any questions or anything, I'll also be hanging about. So that's me for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I will hopefully see you in person at the next one. Thank you very much.